Good day, everyone. My name is Rian Fulgencio, and together with my partner, Jibel Moratin, we will be presenting Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. So this presentation would include the background of both Lao Tzu and Tao Te Ching, the contents of the Tao Te Ching itself. We will also be tackling about Taoism and a brief comparison of this work to a Western literary work. So to formally start this presentation, we would like to ask you, wouldn't it be nice if you could be at peace with yourself and with the world?
Lao Tzu. The Chinese character you see are also often translated as Lao Tzu and Lao Tzu, which means old master. Now, Lao Tzu is said to be a Chinese philosopher who lived between the 6th to 4th century BCE. He is believed to be the author of the Taoist classic Tao Te Ching or Tao Te Ching, and his existence is now debated, with some believing he is nothing more than a legendary myth. And if he was real, he lived about the same time as Confucius. Lao Tzu believed that our ego is a way to our true self, and that human nature is influenced by external factors. Now, moving on to the Tao Te Ching or Tao Te Ching, it can be translated to as the way of virtue or the classics of the way and virtue. While it is heavily attributed to Lao Tzu, some modern historians believe that this book was written by numerous authors, and it contains 81 short poems presenting varied ideas about life and the universe. And these ideas presented can be interpreted in multiple ways, and sometimes it may initially seem contradictory. It could be because it was written without grammatical particles and with a naturalistic and quasi-mystical overtones. And it seems that a lot of the nuances from the original text are lost due to numerous translations and human advancement. And some evidence even suggests that it was initially written as one continuous literary work without division, but was presumably chaptered and split into two sections along the line. And now, the Tao Te Ching has two sections, which is the Tao Te Ching and the Tao and the De Jing. The first 37 chapters form the Tao Jing, also known as Book of the Way, while the remaining 44 chapters form the De Jing or the Book of Virtue. Now, Tao Te Ching centers on the existence of the Tao, which will be further discussed by Rian.
So in chapter 1 of Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu states that the Tao that can be described in language is not the constant Tao, and the name that can be given is not its constant name. The Tao is said to be unfathomable, indescribable, eternal, and unbiased. It cannot truly be described adequately in words because describing it specifically will give it restrictions. But it does encompasses all order of things, and despite not being seen or not being heard, is seen as the way of ultimate reality. In chapter 67 of Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu identified the three treasures of Tao. The first is considered to be compassion, kindness, and love. The second is moderation, simplicity, and frugality. And the third is humility and modesty. Furthermore, in that same chapter, Lao Tzu said that it is thanks to kindness that one can be brave, it is thanks to frugality that one can be generous, and it is by not presuming to be the first among all under heaven that one can make one's ready device last long. Another core concept that's found in Tao Te Ching is what is called the Wu Wei, which is translated as non-action or no action. It doesn't mean that you are encouraged to not act at all. What it means is that you should not take an action that would go against the natural flow of the cosmos. In chapter 2 of Tao Te Ching, it states that, therefore, the sage tends to matters without conscious effort and practice a teaching that is not expressed in words. The Moran folk models their behaviors on him, yet he does not tell them to do so. He gives them life, yet possesses them not. He acts that they do not depend on him, and he achieves success, yet takes no pride in it. Let us now move on to the Tao Te Ching itself.
Now let's go learn more about the Tao Te Ching. For the next section, we came up with four major themes for the Tao Te Ching based on our own interpretations. And the first theme is about harmony and natural order. On chapter 1, the Tao that can't be named is the origin of everything, and the Tao that is named is the mother of myriad things. On chapter 2, we saw how opposites exist to complement and support each other. The sage then uses this and lives their lives abiding by their unattached action. And in chapter 4, we saw how the Tao touches and encompasses all order of things, and it becomes such that it cannot truly be explained as it is older than everything known. On chapter 5, heaven and earth are unbiased and thus follows the sage as he treats and judges the common people impartially. In chapter 6, the mysterious female continuously flows and exists, functioning infinitely. On chapter 14, the Tao may not have physical form, but we must still hold on to it and see to it that we attune ourselves to it. In chapter 18, it is when the necessity to do good is absent that those who do it without prompting makes themselves known. On chapter 21, everything leads back to the Tao. As such, when we seek an answer to something, we must consult the Tao. On chapter 25, the great Tao flows constantly and reaches everything and keeps everything in order and in harmony with one another. On chapter 32, the Tao cannot truly be understood, while naming can help us find order, and it can also lead to restrictions and misfortunes. One must know when to stop naming things in order to avoid said misfortunes. And on chapter 34, the Tao is flexible and spontaneous. It does not desire anything and thus remains unnoticed, but still fulfills its purpose. And lastly, for the harmony and natural order, the chapter 6, wherein one will need to understand and experience how mutual dependence of polar opposites interact in order to achieve one thing.
The second major theme under the Tao Te Ching is enlightenment, and under it includes chapter 8, which talks about how a virtuous person reverses itself like water and adapt to the flow naturally. Thus, they do not force their way and avoid disagreement. In chapter 10, it says that the mysterious virtue allow us to help without being egoistic. While in chapter 11, it says that emptiness enables us to realize the functionality of things. Lao Tzu talked about the qualities of the Tao Master in chapter 15. The Tao Master does not seek nor expect to be filled, and instead allows himself to be taken along the natural course of things as it occur. In 16, it said that peace is found when we yield ourselves to be empty. Because for it is only when we are truly capable of observing and understanding the world that we are acclimatized to what it can serve. Lao Tzu said that a good ruler is they who is subtle and capable, but they who trust themselves in chapter 17. While in chapter 20, he said that there are some things one must give up in order to completely embody the Tao, and this is acceptable to different as long as one is in accordance with the Tao. Chapter 23 said that to be a man of the Tao, one must be one with the Tao, and have trust in oneself, for this will allow things to run its course. On chapter 27, it says that one who is attuned to the Tao can learn from both good and bad people. The teacher that is good exists for those who are not good, and the teacher that is bad exists for those who are good. In chapter 37, Lao Tzu says that self-awareness and understanding is true power. While lastly in chapter 35, he states that one who is attuned with the Tao is free to roam as they had found peace. The Tao remains obscure, but remains infinitely encompassing of everything.
The third theme is about simplicity and moderation. On chapter 3, do not put emphasis on overachieving or on materialistic things that are hard to get, because the people will be introduced to desire and greed. And on chapter 9, finish what should be done and be content when it is done. Do not seek abundance, for you will find that it will only bring you your own downfall. On chapter 12, it is about focusing more on our state of self rather than those materialistic things that our eyes feast on. And on chapter 22, it said that don't be afraid of withdrawing from conflicts. Instead, let things run their course. In chapter 18, it is said that by staying humble and simple, that one will receive great things from the Tao. Allow oneself to be molded, acquiring qualities from both sides, and use for something good while keeping one's own substance and quality. And in chapter 31, do not glorify wars, as they are just but an absence of peace. Even with a winner, the price is paid higher than the satisfaction of the rewards. And lastly, chapter 37, wherein the Tao curses naturally and does not need and does what needs to be done. One must give importance to being simple and be mindful of desires.
The fourth theme is humility or modesty. And under it includes chapter 7, which says to put others first because it is in this way that self-fulfillment can be achieved. In chapter 13, it states that putting self-importance above all else is cause for alarm, and that one should value oneself the same way we value the world. In chapter 19, it states that things would be better if people would read, or those who think themselves superior will not exist, and things are allowed to occur in its natural state. And in chapter 24, Lao Tzu states that arrogance is hated upon by those who is one with the Tao. In chapter 6, to be able to be attuned with the Tao, one must be grounded in vigilance so that they won't lose their footing and get taken away by the waves of life. In chapter 19, it states that do not try to control and change the course of the world because it would be futile. One can only embrace its sacred nature. And lastly, under humility and modesty is chapter 30, where it states that a good leader achieves success but remains grounded. Now, though Wu Wei is not included in our four major themes under Dao Jing, keep in mind that Wu Wei is a recurring theme in all chapters of Dao De Jing. From the chapter 31 of Dao De Jing, it states that when a superior man hears the Dao, he diligently practices it. When the average man hears the Tao, sometimes he retains it, sometimes he forgets it. When the inferior man hears the Tao, he laughs loudly at it. If he did not laugh, what he heard would not be worthy of being the Tao. Now let's move on to the second section of Tao De Jing, the De Jing.
Te or the is the power or virtue that emerges naturally from the Tao. It is the manifestation or it is the Tao at work. Unlike in the Tao Jing section where we broke down each chapters, for the Jing section, we will just be discussing the general lessons and manifestations that we can get and follow from the Tao De Jing. First, know who you are and you will be at peace. By knowing yourself, you are free from the shackles of judgment and desires from others. Second, do not be afraid to yield. Allow yourselves to be taken away in the manner that events are destined to transpire instead of fighting against it. Third, do not seek in abundance and strive for simplicity. Simplicity helps one come closer to the source of being, and as was stated earlier, it is part of the three treasures of the Tao.
The fourth one is be like water. Let us be willing to learn, be flexible, and adapt to changes. Like was stated in chapter 8, be like water to be able to, because in this way we can avoid disagreements. And by avoiding disagreements, there is more peace in our life. Next is in emptiness, there is peace. When we are not clouded by desire or bias, we are less troubled by how things are unfolding in our lives. And finally, have patience and be kind. Put other people first and treat them with kindness, without any expectation of any return, because in this way, we are considered to be doing our purpose. Let us now move on to Taoism. So, Taoism is a spiritual practice, a philosophical school of thought, and religion that teaches a life lived in harmony. It puts emphasis on the natural by allowing life to flow and transpire as it should. And the two fundamental texts of Taoism is Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and Master Zhuang's Zhuangzi. So some principles of Taoism includes that human beings are innately good. So what this means is that there aren't actually any bad people. There are just people who made bad choices or made bad decisions, but with proper guidance, they can be guided back to doing what is good. Another is being flexible and adaptive, because this will make a person happy. Because being open to changes means that a person accepts the flow of the natural order of things and thus is harmonious in the way of the Tao. And finally, peace is achieved when one lives in accordance with the way of the Tao. Because being attuned with the Tao is natural, and going against the Tao is considered to be unnatural.
For the Western comparison, we have the essay of Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American essayist, philosopher, and poet who led the transcendentalist movement of the mid 19th century. We will be comparing the concept of Tao with Emerson's Oversoul. Emerson used the word oversoul to describe an entity or a spiritual energy that exists in the world and is shared by all individuals. So he referred to the idea of a universal spirit that exists in everyone as an oversoul, while in Taoism it is the Tao. Both Taoism and Transcendentalism approaches aim to find a way out of the social reality in order to live a more meaningful existence. And in Transcendentalism, an individual is believed to be capable of rising above human desires or evil. And it is also encouraged to discern for themselves what is moral by using intuition. In Taoism, individuals live moral lives by pursuing balance and comprehending the interconnectedness of all things in the world. And the Oversoul uses a more religious approach where it emphasizes on the relationship of nature, man, and God. So there is a spiritual connection between the world and the individual and the nature. While in Tao Te Ching, it uses a more holistic approach and focuses on the relationship of man and nature. It also makes use of the Wu Wei practice or the art of not doing or non-doing, where it strives to have a society in which people live in peace, harmony, and contentment, free of ambition, want, and competition. On one hand, with the power of the oversoul recognized from within, Emerson challenges people to become active reformers of human advancement to bring out the best in the society, while Lao Tzu encourages non action both in self gratification and in socio-political order. He also advocates doing only what is necessary for a given situation. With that, we leave you this: let nature run its course and go with it.
Yeah, and this concludes our report for Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.